They were in the next room. I hadn't meant to hear it. I hadn't been trying. It was late past midnight, the kind of hour when even the house creaks softer. I had woken with a dry mouth, the kind that no sleep can cure. So I got up, quiet, careful. I always was. It was habit by then. A silence I wore like second skin. The hallway was dark, but I didn't turn on the lights. I knew this house like my own breath. Every floorboard, every draft. I moved through it like a ghost. And maybe that's what I was. Maybe I had always been. The voices came as I passed the living room. The door wasn't fully shut. A sliver of orange light stretched out across the hardwood, and I caught the sound of clinking glasses, low murmurs, the casual laughter of people who never questioned their place. I wouldn't have stopped if I'd heard only Mark. Mark talks too much when he drinks. Her brother always did. He has that smug bark of a man who never built anything but acts like he owns the blueprint. I'd learned to ignore it. But Ethan, his voice stopped me cold. Honestly, he said, and even the way he said honestly sounded dishonest. I wish he'd stay out of family matters. It's like he always has something to say, like this is his house or something. That last word, his, carried weight. Not surprise, not confusion, but anger, disgust. Like my presence was a mistake none of them had figured out how to correct. Then Mark laughed. That full-bodied, slapping thigh, neck tilted back kind of laugh. The sound of shared cruelty. That guy? Come on, man. He was never part of this family. You know that. Silence. The kind that stretches. That waits. And then Laura. Her voice cut through the quiet like a blade pressed, not swung. He needs to know his place. That was all. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. She didn't say he's done a lot for us. Or watch your tone. Or even don't talk about him like that. Nothing. Not a word of loyalty. Not a breath of defense. Just, he needs to know his place. I stood there barefoot on the cold wood, still holding the empty glass in my hand. It felt heavier than it should have, like it was pulling my whole body toward the floor. I didn't walk in. I didn't say a word. I turned, went back the way I came. I left the glass on the nightstand, untouched. And I lay in bed beside the woman who had just made her position clear. She didn't know I'd heard. I didn't tell her. She stirred slightly when I pulled the covers up, murmured something that might have been good night or don't forget the plumber's coming next week. Some domestic half-thought. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, watching the shadows cast by the trees outside shift across the plaster. 16 years. That's how long I had carried that boy. From the moment he turned 8 and looked at me like I was furniture, to the day I signed the lease for his first car, Ethan had been mine in every way that counted, except the one that mattered. Blood. And I had convinced myself that didn't matter. I had told myself for years that biology was trivia, that presence was the real currency of fatherhood, that showing up, day in, day out, rain or shine, that would buy me a seat at the table. That would earn me the right to speak when it came to family matters. I gave. Quietly, always quietly. I paid the rent so no one else had to think about it. I upgraded the house when Mark lost his job and needed a place to stay for a while. I co-signed the loan when Ethan's credit was too thin to get approved. I covered the vacation deposits, the school trips, the surprise repairs, the taxes. I was the man with the wallet and the work ethic and the disappearing act. The man who fixed what broke and left before anyone noticed it had been broken. I was convenient. I was dependable. I was never one of them. And they said it, finally, when they thought I wasn't listening. Know my place? I knew it now. It wasn't a seat at the table. It wasn't the head of the household. It wasn't husband or father. It was sponsor. It was background noise. It was he. Let me tell you something about a man who spends 16 years being useful, who swallows his name, his pride, his need for thanks, day after day. A man who lets himself be overlooked because he thinks that's what love requires, because he believes that patience will be repaid in kind. That man becomes hollow, and a hollow man doesn't break when you push him. He just vanishes, but not all at once. He starts with memory. I lay there that night and remembered the day I paid Ethan's tuition for the first time. He'd gotten into that private university he'd been talking about for months. The acceptance letter was pinned to the fridge like a trophy. Laura cried when she read it. Ethan just smiled, wide and proud, like he'd climbed Everest. He didn't ask how we'd afford it. Didn't even mention cost. Just assumed the way children do, that someone else would take care of it. I took on a second project at work that spring. Nights, weekends. A contract I didn't have the energy for but signed anyway. Because that's what fathers do, right? I remember the click of the mouse as I confirmed the wire transfer. $17,938. The first of many. He never thanked me. Not really. He gave me a nod once. Said, "Cool." Then went out with his friends. I remembered Laura's birthday 3 years ago. I booked us a cabin. Just the two of us. She spent half the weekend texting Ethan, who was upset about something. Classes? A breakup? I don't even remember now. The whole weekend became about him again. Mark had joined us the next weekend. Family celebration, she said. Mark got the bigger steak. The better pour of scotch. That's when it had started to feel less like a marriage and more like a long-term favor. But still I stayed. Still I paid. I thought maybe I hadn't earned it yet. Maybe there was another year I needed to put in. Another bill I had to cover. Another sacrifice that would tip the scale in my favor. I thought, foolishly, that gratitude was cumulative. It isn't. Respect is not earned like a paycheck. It's granted. And when it's not granted, when the people you love decide that your role is to carry them, not walk beside them, something in you starts to slip. That night, as I lay beside the woman who had quietly exiled me from her world, I realized something. I had never been invited in. I had bought the house. I had paid the bills. But I had never been welcomed. And now I had heard it aloud. He needs to know his place. They finally said it. Out loud. And I listened. Oh God help me, I listened. They woke up the next morning like nothing had changed. That was the most insulting part. The ease of their smiles. The sound of their voices echoing in the kitchen like the house wasn't built on the back of betrayal. Ethan laughed at something Mark said. Something low and crude, I'm sure, judging by the tone. Laura poured coffee. The smell was sharp and bitter. I stood in the hallway unseen, listening again. Always listening. I didn't speak to them that morning. I left the house early, before Ethan could ask to borrow the car I still paid for, before Mark could mention rent or gas, or the groceries he forgot to Venmo me for. I left before Laura could smile and pretend we were still something solid. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just away. I ended up in the parking lot of a strip mall, engine running, the world moving around me like I didn't belong to it. I sat there a long time, watching people come and go. Families, couples, fathers holding hands with little children who still looked at them like they were giants. I sat in that car until the heat pressed against the windows and my shirt clung to my back. And I made a decision. Not in anger, not in pain, in silence. The kind of silence that settles over a man who finally understands he's been living someone else's story. That day I took action. The first thing I did was pull out the binder. Thick, black, ugly thing. I kept it hidden in the back of the closet behind my suits. The archive of every payment, every contract, every shared account. I laid it on the dining table, the same table where they had celebrated birthdays without me. Toasted anniversaries that only included my wallet. Laughed over inside jokes that never had space for a man like me. I flipped through page after page. Leases, tuition receipts, car insurance, vacation deposits, credit cards with Laura's name on them, utilities in my name but used by 3 people who barely acknowledged me. I didn't hesitate. I made the first call to the wedding planner. Ethan and his fiancée had picked a vineyard. Expensive, of course. Upscale, rustic charm. It wasn't even about the venue. It was about the statement. About proving that their father, not me, was walking him down the aisle. I had already wired the deposit 6 months ago. $25,000. I called. I canceled. I didn't explain. The woman on the phone hesitated. Said the deposit was non-refundable. I know, I said. Cancel it anyway. The next call was to the leasing office. Ethan's apartment. Technically, it was in my name. He didn't qualify. I had signed as guarantor. I had also been paying half the rent each month since he moved in. I asked to terminate the agreement. Early exit fee? Fine. To pay it. Just get my name off it. I canceled the auto payment tied to my checking account. Next, the car. Not the one I drove. The one I'd bought for Ethan 2 years ago. His graduation gift. A used Camry. Low mileage. Still decent value. The title was in my name. He didn't know that. He never asked. He just assumed. I called my insurance agent. I had the car listed under my household plan. I told them to revoke coverage by the end of the week. He'll need his own policy moving forward, I said. Then I called the DMV. By evening, the paperwork to sell the car was in motion. I went room by room through the house, removing everything tied to me. Online subscriptions, shared streaming accounts, cloud storage, all logged into and changed. Passwords revoked. Family plan, gone. I left their names off the reactivation. I didn't leave notes. I didn't explain. When Laura got home that evening, she greeted me with her usual half-smile. The kind she wore when she wasn't sure which version of me she'd get. The man who fixed things or the one who asked why he never got a thank you. She asked what I wanted for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. She shrugged and walked away. Later that night, I stood at the kitchen counter while she scrolled on her phone. I asked her plainly, "When were you going to tell me what you said last night?" She didn't look up. "What are you talking about?" "In the living room. With Mark. With Ethan." She finally met my eyes. And I saw it then, not guilt. Not surprise. Just the dull, tired look of someone who had been found out and didn't care. "I didn't say anything untrue," she said. "He needs to know his place." Her mouth twitched, but she didn't deny it. I nodded. "I see." "Michael," she said, her tone soft but distant. "Don't make this into something it isn't. You've always known where you stand. You're not Ethan's father. You're not Mark's brother. You're my husband, and you've always been generous. But don't confuse generosity with authority." "Is that what I've done?" She sighed. "This is a family. You're a part of it in your own way. But there are boundaries." She called it a family, not our family. And I was part of it in my own way. Like a tenant, like an investor, but not a father, not a husband in the full sense. Just a man whose money filled the gaps. I walked away. The next morning I visited the bank. We had one joint account. Everything else was mine, always had been. Laura had never asked for access. She liked it that way. Clean. Controlled. But I had set up a wedding account for Ethan. A savings account in both my and Laura's name, meant for wedding expenses and future gifts. Roughly $60,000 sat in it. I withdrew all of it. Transferred it into my private business account. The teller asked if I wanted to notify the joint account holder. "No," I said, and that was it. Each action I took felt like pulling weeds out of my chest. Each severed link made it easier to breathe. That night, I boxed up the documents, proof of every decision. I didn't leave them out. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted clarity. So I waited. It took 4 days for the cracks to show. Ethan called first. Left a voicemail. "Hey, weird thing. The rent bounced. Not sure if something changed on your end. Call me when you can." He didn't say thank you. He never did. 2 days later, Laura came into my office holding her phone. "Did you cancel the car insurance?" she asked. I looked up. "Yes." She stared at me. "Why?" I shrugged. It was time. No warning. No obligation. She narrowed her eyes, but she didn't argue. Somewhere deep down, she knew she'd already said everything that mattered. On the 7th day, Mark confronted me. He stood in the kitchen, holding a notice from the internet provider. "Why is my name no longer on the household plan?" "Because it's not your household." He laughed. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." "Come on," he said. "Don't be petty." I turned the page of my newspaper. "I'm not being petty. I'm being accurate." He left in a storm of curses. And still I said nothing to Laura. Nothing to Ethan. I just kept pulling back. One evening, I handed her a file. Thin, clean, no drama. She opened it slowly. Inside were copies of everything. Account closures, car sale paperwork, lease termination, wedding fund withdrawal, a statement from my lawyer, confirming the separation of all shared financial obligations. It was all there. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The look on her face, that pale, drawn shock, said enough. For the first time, she realized something. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't slammed a door. But I was gone. And nothing in the house would work the way it used to. The first week after I handed Laura the file, no one said a word. Not to me. They talked plenty behind doors, on phones, in the kind of frantic hush that follows the first tremor of an earthquake. But when I entered a room, conversation stopped. Like I was a ghost they'd accidentally summoned. Ethan called less. Mark vanished, conveniently. Laura cooked like normal, but she didn't set a plate for me anymore. Good. The silence tasted better than the food ever did. They still didn't understand. That was the part that almost made me laugh. They thought it was temporary. A glitch. A power outage that would resolve itself. Maybe a midlife tantrum. Something they could ride out until the old pattern returned. But I had stripped the gears. There would be no clicking back into place. I waited, and in time they noticed the missing teeth in the machine. It began with Ethan. He showed up unannounced one afternoon, car pulling into the driveway like a challenge. Laura opened the door before I could. I watched from the hallway. His voice was too loud, purposefully casual. Hey Mom, do you know what's going on with the wedding fund? We talked to the venue and they said the deposit was revoked. Like canceled. Laura stood stiff in the doorway, hand tight on the knob. Yes, I know. So, what happened? She hesitated. Then, ask Michael. His voice dropped. You serious? She didn't answer, just stepped aside, letting him into the house that still smelled faintly of the wood polish I used every Sunday. He found me in the den. I was reading. That wasn't an accident. I wanted him to see me calm, unbothered, alive in a way that had nothing to do with his needs. He stood just inside the door. Didn't sit. Did you pull the wedding money? I nodded, turned a page. His breath caught. Why? I looked up at him. Because I'm not part of the family. He blinked. What? Your words. Or maybe Mark's. Laura's too. Doesn't matter. The message was clear. I set the book down. You said I wasn't your father. Laura said I needed to know my place. I learned, and I acted accordingly. He stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. But that was just a conversation. People say things. They do, I said. And those things matter. He opened his mouth again, then closed it. The flush on his cheeks was new. Embarrassment. Not guilt, just the first prick of consequence. You didn't even talk to me about it, he muttered. I listened to you instead. He left soon after. Didn't slam the door. That surprised me. But the storm was only building. 3 days later, Laura cornered me in the kitchen. She wore the robe I'd bought her last Christmas. She hadn't worn it until now. I noticed that. Ethan's wedding is in 4 months. I know. You didn't just cancel the deposit. You withdrew everything. 60,000. Yes. Her eyes were **T. Do you want to embarrass him? I shook my head. No. Then why? Because I refuse to fund people who treat me like I don't exist. Her jaw tensed. He was upset. He didn't mean it. Then he can call and say that. You don't get to hold the whole family hostage because you feel hurt. I set my mug down carefully. No, I don't feel hurt. I feel clear. For the first time in years. She stared at me. This isn't just about Ethan. This is about control. I nodded. Exactly. The words seemed to stagger her. I leaned in slightly, voice low. Control is what I gave you. All of you. Financial control. Emotional control. The power to include me when it was convenient, and dismiss me when it wasn't. You're twisting this. I'm undoing it. She stepped back like I'd raised a hand. I gave you everything, I said. I paid the bills. I carried the weight. I never asked for much. Just respect. Just the dignity of being seen as something more than a wallet in the corner of the room. She swallowed. Her eyes were glass. I gave you a life, I said. And when I finally asked, just once, to be counted as part of it, you said I needed to know my place. Her lips parted. Closed. Parted again. I didn't mean. I know. You didn't mean to say it aloud. I walked past her, and she let me. That was the last conversation we had for weeks. The collapse wasn't sudden. It was slow, deliberate, like winter swallowing a garden. Ethan's lease expired. Without my signature, he couldn't renew. The apartment slipped through his fingers. He moved back in for now. Laura didn't tell me. I just saw his car one night and found a backpack in the hallway the next morning. No one said anything. Fine. Let them rot in the unspoken. Mark stopped coming by. He had the sense to read a room. The fridge grew emptier. I stopped buying groceries. I cooked for myself and left the rest bare. Laura filled the shelves once, and I watched the bank alerts flash on her phone. She wasn't used to spending her own money. The real tension hit when the wedding planner called her. I overheard. I'm sorry, but if payment isn't received within 10 business days, the date will be forfeited. She cried that night. Not for me. For the loss of the image. The picture-perfect wedding. The mother of the groom in the front row. The idea that all would be well because I would always fund the illusion. Not anymore. The next morning, I put the final document on the table. One sheet. No legalese. No drama. Just confirmation of the dissolution of all shared accounts. All merged liabilities. A notarized statement declaring I was no longer responsible for Ethan's tuition, car, or wedding expenses. That I was not a legal guardian. That I owed him nothing. When they came downstairs, I was already gone. I left the paper where the toast usually sat. When I returned that evening, the air had changed. Ethan sat on the couch, shoulders forward, head in hands. Laura beside him, silent. The paper sat on the coffee table. They had read it. I stood in the doorway. I didn't speak. Ethan looked up first. His eyes were red. Not from sadness. From panic. What is this? He asked. You know what it is. His voice cracked. You can't just walk away. I'm not walking. I'm stepping back. Laura stared at me. Her voice was hollow. You're really doing this. I already did. This is your family. No, I said. This was a transaction, and I've ended it. Ethan stood. You raised me. I did. Then how can you? Because I thought I was raising a son. Turns out I was financing a stranger. He flinched. Laura stood, her hands trembling. You're punishing us. I'm revealing you. I didn't wait for more. I walked upstairs, closed the door, and for the first time in years, I slept without grinding my teeth. They stopped calling me by name. That's what I noticed first. Not Michael. Not Mike. Just silence or clipped references. He, him, that guy. The man who paid for everything. Now spoken of like a stranger passed on the street. It didn't bother me. Not anymore. It confirmed what I'd already accepted. I had never really belonged. I had been an instrument, a function, a means to an end. And when the function stopped serving them, they panicked. Not because they lost me. Because they lost control. I watched it all play out from the corner of the room. Laura's silence turned brittle. The kind that no longer softened moments but cracked them in half. She floated through the house like a ghost clinging to old air, saying just enough to keep from shattering completely. Ethan barely spoke at all. The wedding was 2 months out now, and I heard the conversations, whispers over speakerphone, tension in the pacing footsteps, Laura on the phone with relatives explaining why the venue might change, why some things had to be scaled back. She never used my name, never said what really happened, just spoke in euphemisms, budget changes, a shift in plans, as if that could hide the truth. The wedding was burning down because I had stepped out of frame, and without me there, no one else knew how to hold the image up. One night, I heard Ethan on the phone with his fiancée. His voice was tight, clenched, low and angry. I don't know, okay? He just pulled everything. The car, the money, all of it. A pause. No, he didn't say anything to me directly. Another pause. No, I'm not going to beg him. Another. Yes. I know your parents are asking about the venue. A longer pause. Jesus, what do you want me to do? He hung up hard. The sound echoed, and I stood in the hallway, still as stone. Let him stew. Let him live in the space I once filled. Let them all. A week later, Laura tried again. We were in the backyard. She stood beside the rusted grill I used to keep spotless. The air was heavy with summer and silence. She didn't look at me when she spoke. You could still help him. I didn't answer. You raised him. Still nothing. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I turned slowly. It used to. She closed her eyes for a long moment. Then, he's drowning. No, I said. He's learning to swim without a life jacket, he set on fire himself. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. You all had your chance. You had years. 16 to be exact. And when it counted, you chose to pretend I wasn't part of this family. You chose your brother. You chose Ethan's pride. You chose your silence. You're punishing him. No, I said. I'm correcting a mistake. She looked at me then. What mistake? Believing I had a place here. She turned away, and didn't speak to me again for 3 days. Let her sit with it. Let her marinate in the silence she once nized against me. I lived my days in clarity. Not peace. Not joy. Just truth. And truth, while often cold, is clean. Then came the final collapse. One afternoon, a heavy envelope slid through the mail slot. Thick, formal, addressed to me. Ethan's name was on the return label. I opened it at the dining table. Inside, a plea wrapped in paper, a detailed request, a budget breakdown, an appeal, typed in stiff language, polite, distant, desperate. It began with Michael instead of Dad. Said things like, I know you've been disappointed and I'd be grateful for anything you could contribute. It mentioned past support, shared history, and respect. It did not say sorry. Not once. I closed the envelope, set it aside. That night, Laura asked if I'd read it. I did. And I've already given my answer. She blinked. You didn't say anything. Exactly. She pressed her lips into a hard line. He's reaching out. He's reaching for a lifeline, not a relationship. He's trying. Too late. You're being cruel. No, I said. I'm being honest. She didn't understand. She never had. She had loved what I gave, not who I was. She'd loved the solution I represented, the gap I filled, the labor I performed, but not the man. Not really, and certainly not when it counted. Weeks passed. The wedding was rescheduled, the venue downgraded, the guest list trimmed. I wasn't invited. Good. Let them pretend I never existed. Let them sit at tables I paid for, wearing suits bought with the ghost of my generosity, and toast to a future built on borrowed pride. The morning of the wedding, I was at the bank, transferring funds to a new account, closing out the last joint thread. The banker asked if I wanted to keep the old account open for legacy purposes. I said no. I walked out of that branch lighter than I'd felt in years. That afternoon, I dropped off one final document. In person, hand-delivered, a notarized statement. It outlined, in full, the termination of all financial and legal ties between myself and Ethan, retroactive and permanent. No backing out. No emergency clause. No loophole. Laura wasn't home. Ethan was. He answered the door in a wrinkled shirt, tie half done, panic barely concealed under his skin. When he saw the envelope, he didn't reach for it. What is this? He asked. Closure, I said. He opened it, scanned it. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Are you serious? I nodded. His voice cracked. Why are you doing this? I already did it. This is just the receipt. Jesus Christ, he whispered. You're really walking away. I didn't answer. He stared at the paper, then up at me, and for the first time his face changed. Not with anger, not with pride, with fear. "You're not coming to the wedding?" I raised a brow. Was I invited? His silence said enough. I stepped back, turned. He didn't call out, didn't beg. He simply closed the door. And I left. No slam, no rage, no theatrics. Just the soft click of a door sealing shut behind a man who finally knew the truth. I had been nothing to them. Now they were nothing to me. That night, I slept in a new place. A rental for now. Clean walls, quiet air. No photos on the mantle. No echo of someone else's son in the hallway. Just me. And peace. Not joy. Not triumph. Just peace. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I had paid the price. And I had withdrawn my investment. Let them build their lives on what's left. Let them discover, too late, that the ground they stood on was mine all along. Let them realize what it means to tell a man he's nothing, and believe he won't act accordingly. And now I ask you, was I cruel? Or was I fair? Was I wrong to sever the lifeline I had become? Or did I simply take back what was always mine? You tell me, if someone told you to your face that you weren't part of the family you built with your hands, would you have stayed? Or would you have left like I did? Quiet, calm, free.